If you're looking to do everything you can to save your thyroid, in addition to listening to my podcast, you also might want to subscribe to my free online newsletter, which is called Healthy Gut, Healthy Thyroid. Not only will you get the latest news on how to heal your gut and restore your thyroid health, but during each edition, I'll demonstrate a different blood or functional medicine test marker that relates to healing your gut and or thyroid. And there will also be an Ask Dr. Eric section where not only can you see questions that other people have asked related to gut and thyroid health, but you can also submit a question for me to answer in a future edition. To subscribe to the Healthy Gut, Healthy Thyroid newsletter, please visit SaveMyThyroid.com/newsletter. Thank you for joining me on the Save My Thyroid podcast, where I help people save their thyroid and regain their health. My name is Dr. Eric Osansky, and if you have hyperthyroidism, including Graves' disease or toxic multinodular goiter, then you will especially benefit from these episodes. If you have Hashimoto's thyroiditis, you also need to save your thyroid, and therefore you will also find many of the episodes to be valuable. You're about to listen to another Save My Thyroid Health Audit, as I will spend approximately 25 minutes chatting with someone who has a thyroid or autoimmune thyroid condition and give them actual advice to help them improve their health. In this Save My Thyroid Audit, I will speak with someone who has been dealing with thyroid eye disease. Her name is Corie, and as you're about to hear, she found that improving her diet greatly helped with her thyroid eye disease condition. Just a reminder that this audit isn't exactly the same as a comprehensive consultation I do with a patient, as prior to doing an audit, I have the person fill out a brief application, and it's fine if they send a few basic blood tests, whereas with the patient consultation, I'll have them fill out a comprehensive health history and other forms, and they usually will also send a decent amount of labs for me to review. And of course, the patient consultation is a lot longer, but either way, I'm confident that you will find this conversation to be valuable. Also, if you would like to apply to do an audit with me, you can do so by visiting SaveMyThyroid.com/audit. As usual, make sure you listen to the post-episode chat after the outro music, as I'll expand on the AIP diet and thyroid eye disease, double vision and thyroid eye disease, should Tepezza be considered, extremely high antibodies in thyroid eye disease, TSH receptor antibodies versus thyroid-stimulating immunoglobulins, the gut and thyroid eye disease, and fatigue and Graves' disease. And you can access the show notes by visiting SaveMyThyroid.com/183. Anyway, here's my conversation with Corie.
Welcome to the Save My Thyroid podcast, hosted by Dr. Eric Osansky. To stay up to date on the latest thyroid health-related topics, visit SaveMyThyroid.com. The following discussion is for educational purposes only and is not intended to diagnose or treat any disease. Please do not apply any of this information without first speaking with your doctor. Now let's head to the show.
So welcome to another Save My Thyroid Audit. I have with me Corie, who's joining me from Washington State. And Corie, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thank you for asking me and for having me on.
Yeah, you are welcome. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. And so you've been dealing with thyroid eye disease, and from what you put down, that it took a long time for them to diagnose this. You've had some good results with the diet following an AIP diet. So how long ago was it that you were diagnosed with thyroid eye disease, Corie?
It was last year, and like I said, it took them forever. It actually started in March. My mother had just passed away. I got these big bags under my eyes, and I just thought it was from being outside mowing the lawn without wearing a hat, because the sun is pretty intense here. But that was all the beginning of it. And then in July, the end of July, I started with the double vision, and I had that for at least 2 months before they actually sent me to an eye specialist who said, "You have thyroid eye disease." At that time, I had seen an endocrinologist, but he wasn't even sure that I had the thyroid eye disease. Anyways, he had ordered all the tests, and of course, then they came back positive for Graves' disease. And then after the professional eye specialist said that about the TED, then he agreed with it.
Okay. So yeah, you had the TSI that was elevated, thyroid stimulating immunoglobulins, the TRAB,
Correct.
which are the TSH receptor antibodies, and then you are on methimazole, like 2.5 milligrams.
I was, yes. And then my endocrinologist only ordered it until each time I was going to go back and see him. So I had run out of it, and I put in a request to have it refilled because there wasn't time yet for me to see him. And that's when I found out that he was gone. And, they hadn't notified me of that. So then when I went ahead, he had ordered the labs already, all the repeat labs. So I had those done. They told me I could go ahead and have them done even though he wasn't there. And my TSH was 6 something. And so when my attending went ahead and reordered the methimazole, I did not go back on it.
You said your TSH was 6 when you were on the methimazole?
Yes.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. So that, and 2.5 milligrams, very low dose. So yeah, that was probably a good indication you didn't need the methimazole any longer. And your antibodies, they've improved, but they're still elevated.
Yes. The TRAB is now 3.96.
Okay.
And then the TSI is down to 260%.
260%. And the range is like less than 140% on that lab.
Correct.
Yeah. And then the TRAB
Correct.
probably like 1.75. Okay. So they're definitely elevated, but not as high as they were. And the double vision has improved.
Correct.
You're no longer experiencing that. Is that correct?
Yes, correct. After about 5 or 6 months, just before I went on the ASI diet, is that right?
AIP, yeah.
Anti-inflammatory. AIP, yeah. It cleared up. It started fluctuating at first, and I had gone ahead and got the prism glasses because I couldn't drive or anything because I couldn't see well enough. Everything was raised above the
Hmm.
other. And then my eye doctor wasn't very familiar with it, had told me that if I went that route, I wouldn't be able to go back to normal glasses. Well, it turned out he was wrong because I was able to easily go back to regular glasses once the double vision cleared up.
All right. So you went on AIP after the double vision cleared up. So the diet had nothing to do with the double vision improving.
No, not the double vision, but it greatly improved all the eye swelling I had. That really went down. In fact, I had been sent to another specialist because I had considered doing that medicine that they do for the thyroid eye disease. And he was the only one in the area that did it.
Was it the Tepezza?
Yes. And so when I went to see him, it was the University of Oregon in Portland. So they were doing some kind of a study. So he offered me to be included in the study group of this experimental drug they were doing. And so while I was debating it, I had gone on the AIP diet and everything greatly improved. So when I went back to see him, he was impressed with how less everything was. I still had the fat that builds up around your eyes and the bulging, but mine wasn't quite as bad as some other people who have had a lot of trouble with it. And so everything was put on hold as far as that. And I was kind of glad when he told me the percentage of people that have a recurrence of the thyroid eye disease after Tepezza and some of the other ones. I didn't want to go that route. Plus, you can have hearing problems with it. And I already had hearing problems from a childhood tumor. So I didn't want any more.
Yeah, I agree with Tepezza. Hearing loss is one of the potential side effects. Tinnitus, ringing in the ears, and other side effects. And then some people do need more than one round. So for those who are not familiar with Tepezza, it's infusions. You get 8 infusions 3 weeks apart. I believe it's still like that. And some people might go through the 24 weeks and then might need additional treatment with Tepezza. And again, the side effects could be a little bit scary. So yeah, I'm glad you also didn't need to take the Tepezza. Do you know what your antibodies were previously? Like you said, your antibodies decreased. I don't know if you have handy your TRAB and TSI
Yes. The TRAB started at 11.59.
Okay.
And then my TSI originally was 356%, but it went up to 446 and then started coming down after I went on the AIP.
You said it was originally 356 and went up to 446?
Right.
Okay. And now it's 260. Okay. Wonderful.
Right.
All right. So diet, and you're no longer following AIP. You followed it for 3 or 4 months and no longer following
I did.
the same.
I still pretty much follow it. I definitely don't do any of the gluten that I stopped. And then I try and stay on it. My worst thing is Diet Coke. Now, when I was on the strict AIP, I was good about it. But now that I've slacked off, and that's always been kind of my problem. I did the paleo diet several years ago, but because of the weight I lost, it bottomed out my blood pressure and my heart rate was up. Now, I have no idea. They told me I wasn't drinking enough and wasn't eating enough salt. So I kind of slacked off on that. But once I stopped, and I still kind of follow a paleo diet, but not as strict.
Yeah. How frequently do you drink the Diet Coke?
Probably a couple of times a week. I
Okay.
used to have it in the house, and that was my main drink. And I don't keep it in the house at all because otherwise I wouldn't drink anything else.
Yeah. But otherwise, so you said you're gluten free. Are you dairy free as well?
Yes. I was dairy free, and then it was one of the things I reintroduced, and it didn't seem, the only thing it ever did with me was a runny nose. But I have found that since I did the AIP, everything almost makes my nose run. I can eat an apple and I get a runny nose, so I'm never sure exactly what causes it.
Yeah. Might have some histamine issues. How is your gut? You can't always go by symptoms, but do you have any digestive symptoms? Do you have regular bowel movements, or do you have more constipation or loose stools?
No, I have regular bowel movements. If I try and eat some of the reintroduced, like the gluten-free, I might have more trouble being regular. But as long as I make really call it raw sauerkraut, as long as I remember to have some of that every day, I'm usually pretty good. I don't have a lot of trouble with that. That's why it was hard for me to say, yeah, I had leaky gut when I never really had any major gut symptoms. The only thing I ever had was kind of a sludge gallbladder, but that's gone back and forth. Sometimes they tell me I have it, and other times they tell me I don't.
Okay.
So,
All right. Any other, not necessarily digestive symptoms, but any other symptoms? Are your energy levels okay? Do you have any other symptoms that bother you?
I do have the fatigue, but I also get up very early, and I don't always get in the 8 hours sleep I would like to get. We take care of my 95-year-old mother-in-law who has
Oh,
Alzheimer's. And if I want to get anything done, I like to do my Bible reading and pray time in the morning. I have to get up early. Otherwise, she's wandering around. And so, anyway, so I don't always get enough sleep. So I never know, is that why I'm tired a lot of the times, or if it actually is food related or the Graves related.
yeah. It could be any of these. Not getting enough sleep is a common cause of why a lot of people have fatigue. Eating the wrong foods could be a factor as well, and reacting to the foods. And then, I mean, Graves itself, like if someone has high thyroid hormone levels due to Graves, that won't necessarily cause fatigue, but the inflammation associated with it. And then it also can have a negative effect on mitochondria, which are the energy powerhouses of the cell. So sometimes in some people, Graves will cause fatigue. Like when I dealt with Graves back in 2008, 2009, I can't say I dealt with fatigue, but over the years working with a lot of people with hyperthyroidism graves. Some people do for the reasons I just mentioned and other reasons as well. Nutrient deficiencies could be another one that was actually, someone on the audit, but I've had other people, just patients, low in certain nutrients like iron, for example. And the only way to know is by testing. So like this person post-menopause, so she wasn't cycling and she was actually following more of a carnivore-based diet. So she was getting enough through the diet. But I think in her case, it was gut related. So obviously everybody's different. But I guess my point is nutrient deficiencies could also sometimes cause fatigue. Everything else okay? Is it mainly just the low energy levels, or are you experiencing any pain, like joint pain, muscle pain, or?
Well, I already have back problems. I think I had already told you I was an RN and I was an ICU RN, and I hurt my back at work. And so I had surgery. So I have kind of chronic back problem, but I also have, in the past, I've had hip problems because of mine's a low injury. So it kind of goes down into your hips and that.
Mm-hmm.
But most of that has been eliminated with the anti-inflammatory diet.
Okay.
That I used to be on leave all the time.
Yeah.
And when I read what it does to the gut, then I stopped it again. When I went on the paleo, I was able to get off of it because it took care of all the inflammation at that time. But when we stopped doing the strict paleo, then I ended up back on it because I was getting hip pain again. Anyways, with this, I took, when I read all the stuff that it does to your gut, I stopped taking it. And I haven't really had any trouble except for my elbow.
Okay.
That kind of bothers me.
Yeah.
From probably gardening stuff.
Okay. So just your elbow, and then again, so sleep could be better, which is understandable why it's not with your mother. And that also probably is a little bit stressful too, like just work.
Oh, that's the major stress I have. And I'm convinced that's what kicked me over into Graves' disease. I think I had mentioned that I had been on thyroid medicine because I had gone to a nurse practitioner who told me, well, most people feel better at a higher level. I think I was 2 point something. And she thought I would feel better at a different level. And I can't remember now, since it was back in 2013. I can't remember if she meant lower or higher than what I was. So she put me on the medicine, but I have a strong family history of Hashimoto's. So
Okay.
everybody just assumed I had Hashimoto's. And I don't know whether I did or not because they never did the antibodies at that time. They didn't do those till later, and my
Yeah.
Hashimoto antibodies were all negative.
Okay. Yeah. So probably not. If they were negative years later, they probably were negative back then as well. Just the TSI and TRAB recently when you got those were the
Correct.
only ones positive
Correct.
and the others. Okay. Hey, this is Dr. Eric. And if you're looking to do everything you can to save your thyroid, in addition to listening to this podcast, there are a few different ways we can help you. First of all, I've written 3 books on thyroid health, 2 related to hyperthyroidism and 1 related to Hashimoto's, and you can get all of them on Amazon, or to learn more about them, visit savemythyroid.com/thyroid books. Second, you can also join my Graves' disease and Hashimoto's healing community by visiting savemythyroid.com/thyroid group. And finally, if you want to get personal help from me, you can visit the website workwithdreric.com. Just to let you know, I only see a limited number of new patients each month, and I do require anyone interested to complete a brief online application before working with me. And now back to the show. Yeah, again, diet's big. We'll talk about that. I guess so one question I have is, how would you like your health to be 6 months from now or 6 to 12 months from now? And then in your opinion, what's the number one thing preventing you from restoring your health, from getting your antibodies to be normal? Is there like a potential roadblock? Maybe it's the stress we spoke about still, but so the 2 questions, where would you like to be in the future? What's holding you back?
I'd like to be like you, where I was able to put the Graves into remission.
Mhm.
That's what I would like, is to have all my labs normal. It is a big stress factor with my mother-in-law. You think as a nurse that I could handle this and I would be okay and know how to deal with it, but I'm not very good at it. And she is sweet too. It's not like she's a terror to take care of or anything. It's
Mhm.
the constant repetitive reminding her to do this or that or not do this or that. It's all that. And right now, there is no other option for
Yeah.
her. So I'm trying to be better at it. I'm not doing really well at it. I didn't even realize about the Graves rage. I just saw your podcast on that. I didn't realize it was a thing. I often wondered because I have a temper because my dad had a temper, so we grew up with that. But I had hoped, giving me an excuse, that the Graves had something to do with it. But I was having a lot of trouble just controlling, just suddenly getting mad about something that was little or stupid.
Mhm.
And so I'm working on that.
Okay. No, that's good. Yeah. The Graves Rage. I probably should have come out with that episode sooner because I didn't experience Graves Rage when I dealt with Graves, but a lot of people do. So it does affect the mood and makes people more angry. Not everybody, but a good number of people. It affects mood,
Yeah,
makes them more angry and irritable. So it's, like I said, pretty common. So you want to get into remission, which is everybody who listens to me, listens to this podcast. They, of course,
right.
want to restore their health and get the antibodies normal. I have some podcast episodes on the antibodies. I do have an episode, savemythyroid.com/150, where it's a single episode where I talk about lowering antibodies. So, I mean, you did a lot of things with the diet, which is great, but it goes beyond. But I'm also going to have like individual episodes, kind of like a series of podcast episodes talking about lowering antibodies. So definitely look out for that. And then have you read my book, my more
Yeah,
recent one, Hyperthyroid
yeah,
Healing
I have
Diet?
I have both of them. I'm
Okay.
in the middle of your book. I'm at almost page 300.
Oh, wow. Okay. Awesome. I should have asked you. I usually try to ask people, Corie, well, how did you find out about me originally?
There's a girl back home that contacted me after my sister-in-law had told everybody that I had Graves, and she had Graves, and she had it far worse than me because she had the blood pressure and high heart rate in that. And she told me about Dr. Amy Meyer's book.
Mm-hmm.
And then she said, and there's this other book here with this guy, but I haven't gotten that one yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I saw it, I ordered both your books. And yours I read right away because your first one, I loved it. It was very down to earth, very easy to read. All your tips were very easy to implement. Nothing was hard about it, nothing seemed daunting. When you're first going through this kind of stuff, everything can seem daunting, but your book
Yeah.
was very easy to read. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed hers too, but hers took me longer to go through than yours. She actually gets into more technical stuff, which is nothing wrong with that. But now your second book goes through more technical stuff. That's why it's taking me a little longer to get through that.
Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, Dr. Meyer, I was actually part of years ago. I think it was 2015. She had a thyroid summit. And so I was part of that. I think I was the only speaker on hyperthyroidism. That's the only reason I think I was on part of the summit because there was
Oh,
nobody else she
wow.
could find. And I sent her a copy of my book and she invited me on the podcast to talk about hyperthyroidism. You could find it on her YouTube channel now, the interview. But she spelled my name wrong. She spelled it Erik, and it's Eric. But if you visit her YouTube channel again, you can see my interview, which is from 2015, even though she posted it, I think, in 2023. Okay, so antibodies you want to get normal, and then stress is probably like one of the biggest roadblocks. Obviously, you can't eliminate the stressor. That's the thing with, and you're not alone. I mean, a lot of people are caretakers. My dad he has some health issues. He's in his mid 80s and he doesn't live with me. So it's a different situation, but it's obviously still a stressor. And I mean, with you, obviously a bigger stressor because your
Right.
mother-in-law lives with you and dealing with Alzheimer's is challenging. And it's good that she has a good personality and very sweet. So that's something, even though you can't change the situation, you still got to try your best to work on stress management, try to get as much sleep as you can. If you can in this situation, maybe take mini naps. I don't know if she takes naps during the day, but when she does, I know it might seem like an opportunity to get things done if she does do that. But you also want to take care of your health. That's the thing. If you're only getting 5, 6 hours sleep and you're waking up to try to get things done or staying up late to try to get things done, it's going to be hard to recover. So definitely try to get even another 30, 45 minutes of sleep, whether it's at night or with naps, and then blocking out time for stress management, even if it's 5, 10 minutes, doing some deep breathing. I would say do adrenal testing, which I recommend to everybody. I mean, probably know you have adrenal issues, but yeah, I usually recommend adrenal testing so we could see like what imbalances someone have. Have you done any functional medicine type testing, or has it just been like the typical like blood testing?
I did do the adrenals, but because it was the regular MD ordering, they're all blood tests.
Okay, so blood testing for adrenals, just like cortisol, maybe a morning cortisol, DHEA, maybe.
Right. I do have those. The ACTH was 7. The AM cortisol was 10. And he did a DHEA sulfate. That was 19.
Okay. That seems low. I guess it depends on the range of DHEA sulfate, but they must have used a different
They
range.
they all said they were within normal range, but some of them were on the lower of the
Yeah.
norm.
Even cortisol, like in the blood, like a 10 is within the range, but sometimes the blood test kind of spikes up the cortisol when you do a blood test, you either get in the blood draw itself or some people. So sometimes it'll make it higher than it looks like. So if someone's a 10, to me, I mean, you might be a 10, but you might actually be a little bit lower than that. I mean, the advantage of saliva testing is looking at the circadian rhythm of cortisol. Cortisol fluctuates throughout the day, should be at the highest levels in the morning, gradually decrease throughout the day. Some medical doctors are starting to recommend saliva testing, but most of them still just do the blood testing and maybe again the DHEA or DHEAS. And then yeah, you got the ACTH as well, which is a pituitary hormone, kind of like TSH, but for the adrenals. Getting back to thyroid eye disease. So AIP diet helped. Have you done anything else like taking selenium is something that a lot of people take, vitamin D? Have you had
Oh,
vitamin D tested and supplemented with
oh
vitamin
yeah.
D?
Well, I don't think I've had the vitamin D tested, but I've
Okay.
been on the selenium for a long time, for years.
Okay.
We've been taking that, and then D3 because everyone. I had somebody tell me everyone in the Pacific Northwest needs to take vitamin D because we don't
Mhm.
get as much sunshine as
Yeah.
everybody else. So we've been on that we take 5,000 IUs a day.
Yeah. I take 5,000 IUs per day. Not to say everybody needs that. I would say ask your doctor in the future to do a test just to see what it shows, just to make sure that you're not taking too much, or who knows, maybe you need a little bit more. But so both of those, you wouldn't want to take too much where your levels are over 100 or where your levels still are not optimal. Are you taking K2, vitamin K2 with that?
No.
Make sure next time, or I mean, you can either take it separately or a lot of vitamin D3 supplements come with K2 because the K2, like vitamin D, increases intestinal absorption of calcium. And you want to make sure the K2 helps to guide the calcium into the bone. So, yeah, definitely would take some
Okay.
vitamin K2 with that. I mean, again, you're doing some great things the diet, the AIP diet. And I know you mentioned like in the form, like the reintroductions, which you've already done some reintroductions. Again, Diet Coke wouldn't be one of the
Mhm.
first ones I would have recommended, but when it just Dr. Sarah Ballantyne, she has and I mentioned this in my book, in the hyperthyroid, you have my book, The Hyperthyroid Healing Diet. So you
Right,
actually should know how to do the reintroductions because I have information on doing
right.
that. But Dr. Sarah Ballantyne also has like stages of reintroduction, which I mentioned in the book. And so I usually recommend following something like that, where like usually like eggs would be the first thing, or egg yolks would be the first thing to reintroduce for most people, and just going down the list for different stages, and really ideally save if you're going to introduce foods that aren't as nutrient dense or healthy, like Diet Coke and other foods, that would be like later on the list. I mean, I know you already reintroduced those, but you would want to reintroduce things one at a time, because that was another question, like how do you know if you're getting a reaction? So always one at a time, every few days. And usually it's not perfect, but usually if you get some type of reaction and you're just focusing on one food at a time, you'll notice a difference. But I mean, diet could definitely make a big difference with Graves and thyroid eye disease, the vitamin D, the selenium, omega-3s, having healthy omega-3s. So if you're eating fish 2 or 3 times a week, great. If not, then maybe consider like supplementing with the fish oil. And really, just like I talk about in my 2 books, which you know, because you read my first book and you're like 300 pages through the second book. I mean, besides diet and lifestyle, sometimes you do need to go beyond that. I mean, many times actually need to go beyond that and look for other areas for triggers, finding, removing triggers, doing things to reduce your toxic burden, sometimes looking at infections. I know things can get pricey and add up as well. And it doesn't mean you have to spend thousands of dollars on testing, but that's also something to keep in mind. I would say in your situation, the number one thing right now, I would still focus on diet and lifestyle, just because it's still not optimal. You are following AIP. I mean, of course, I'm going to say stop the Diet Coke. I'm going to say just because the impact it could have on the gut microbiome, potentially. There's some controversy over that, but some of the artificial sweeteners might negatively affect gut microbiome. So I would say to really, if anything, just follow a regular paleo diet if you don't want to follow an AIP diet. And then, the stress and the sleep. I mean, it's easy to say, let's do like a bunch of testing, but if you don't have the diet and lifestyle in order, which is what the Hyperthyroid Healing Diet book is about, then it's really is going to be hard to recover. So you've gotten some great changes with those antibodies so far, but that would, before you do a lot of future testing, because you might not need to do a lot of future testing, I would say just bear down on the diet and lifestyle, the stress management, the sleep. Try to do, I know you're doing a lot, trying to do a lot, but maybe you could do a little bit more under the circumstances. I know it's not going to be perfect, but that's what I would work on. I mean, I do recommend testing like saliva testing and looking at nutrients and heavy metals. Sometimes I'll do gut testing, but like I said, in your situation, it makes sense. Not that you can't do some of those other tests, but definitely focus on trying to do your best to handle the stress and see if you could get a little bit more sleep.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. You are welcome. And again, thank you so much for doing this, Corie. Appreciate you getting together for this audit. Hope you found this to be valuable. And I hope the listeners also found this conversation to be valuable. Definitely, everyone, again, hope you are finding these audits to be helpful, and look forward to catching you in a future audit as well as a future episode. All right. Take care, everyone. And again, thank you so much, Corie.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to the Save My Thyroid podcast. If you haven't done so already, make sure you hit subscribe to stay up to date on the latest thyroid health-related topics. And to get your free thyroid and immune health restoration action points checklist, visit SaveMyThyroidChecklist.com. Thanks so much for tuning in.
So that was a wonderful call with Corie as we chatted about her thyroid eye disease experience. So Corie followed the AIP diet, the autoimmune protocol, and that seemed like it greatly helped with her thyroid swelling. And I mean, diet is important. It's an important piece of the puzzle. This doesn't mean that everybody with thyroid eye disease needs to follow an AIP diet and that everybody who follows an AIP diet will receive similar results. But if someone eats inflammatory foods on a consistent basis, then it could be problematic. And AIP serves as an elimination diet. So it's not just about foods such as gluten and unhealthy oils. I mean, obviously you want to avoid those, but there are some foods that are allowed on even a paleo diet that might cause problems in some people and might be worth eliminating, such as eggs. I mean, eggs are nutrient dense, But in some cases, giving up eggs can make a big difference. And other people, nightshades can make a big impact. Double vision. So Corie also experienced double vision. And it seems like that the double vision improved before she followed the diet. So we can't give credit to any natural protocol necessarily when it comes to double vision. And admittedly, sometimes double vision can be challenging to treat from a natural perspective or even a medical perspective without other conventional treatments such as surgery, even Tepezza, which I'll talk about shortly. That really doesn't seem to help much with double vision, at least my experience, what I've seen. And it's been a small sample size of patients I've worked with who've been taking Tepezza. But yeah, double vision, glad that her double vision improved, even though, again, it was on her own. So let's get back to Tepezza. So should Tepezza be considered? So she wanted to avoid Tepezza just because some of the side effects, which can be scary, hearing loss, tinnitus. Again, it doesn't mean a high percentage of people will experience this. I'm not sure of the statistics. One of my patients saw an eye specialist, and he told her that he sees approximately 10% of his patients that take Tepezza experience hearing loss, which you could look at this two ways. That means 90% of people don't experience hearing loss, which is a lot of people. But to me, 10% is still a lot. That's a really good chance you won't experience hearing loss, but still don't like those odds. Now, the hearing loss isn't always permanent. Again, I'm not sure about the statistics as far as how long the hearing loss is usually an issue. I did work with a male patient who took Tepezza a number of years ago, and the hearing loss was for a few months. And I don't think it was complete hearing loss, just hearing impairments, which still not fun. Tinnitus, also not fun to deal with. So I'm not saying there's not a time and place for Tepezza. It just should be like surgery, should be a last resort, in my opinion. But I also came across a patient who received Tepezza and really greatly helped with the eye swelling, and the bulging was affecting her quality of life. Again, I didn't tell her to get the Tepezza. She got it on her own. It did make a big difference, and made a big difference only after, I believe, the first 2 infusions. You get 8 infusions 3 weeks apart. Fortunately, she hasn't experienced any hearing loss yet, although her doctor mentioned that most of the cases, the hearing loss comes after the 4th infusion. So she only received 2 as of her giving me an update on how she felt. So it's an expensive treatment, a few $100,000. So you definitely would need insurance to cover it in all likelihood. But everything is risk versus benefits, and only you can make that decision. And then antibodies, extremely high antibodies in thyroid eye disease. Most cases of thyroid eye disease, you are going to have higher antibodies. And with Corie, she had really high antibodies. The more recent antibodies, not as bad, still obviously out of range, but not as bad as they were previously. So typically, if you have really high thyroid antibodies, those thyroid stimulating immunoglobulins specifically, if those are extremely high, that will increase the risk of developing thyroid eye disease. Again, doesn't mean you definitely will, and it doesn't mean someone with lower antibodies can't develop thyroid eye disease, but typically the higher the antibodies, the greater the risk of developing thyroid antibodies, or the higher the thyroid antibodies, the greater the risk of developing thyroid eye disease. And then there are 2 antibodies. I mean, the thyroid stimulating immunoglobulins are the antibody associated with Graves', but it's a type of TSH receptor antibody, or TRAB. It sounded like she had both of those tested. I typically just recommend the TSI testing, but if you get both of them tested, that's fine. Typically, they'll both be elevated when someone has Graves' and thyroid eye disease. And then I want to briefly talk about the gut and thyroid eye disease. Most of the immune system cells are located in the gut, so you need a healthy gut in order to have a healthy immune system. Thyroid eye disease, again, it's an autoimmune condition like Graves', Hashimoto's, other autoimmune conditions. You need to have a healthy gut. And I have other episodes where I discuss this and guest experts discuss this. And then fatigue and Graves' disease. So she mentioned how she experienced fatigue, and Not everybody with hyperthyroidism experiences fatigue. Usually it's more common with low thyroid. When I dealt with Graves, I didn't experience fatigue, but everyone's different and there could be a number of different mechanisms. Hyperthyroidism does put a lot of stress on the mitochondria, which are the energy powerhouses of the cells. So that could be a mechanism. Nutrient deficiencies, such as an iron deficiency, other nutrient deficiencies as well. Sleep issues, hyperthyroidism. A lot of times people experience sleep issues, which can cause fatigue, could also affect adrenals. And my adrenals were in really bad shape. Everything was low, cortisol was low, DHA was low, and yet I still didn't experience fatigue. So just because someone has compromised adrenals, it doesn't mean they will experience fatigues. But like I said, there are other factors that can be taking place. And I guess that's all I wanted to chat about. She did mention that she likes to drink Diet Coke. It sounds like she hasn't recently, but if Diet Coke was allowed, she would. And obviously she could do it, but she knows that she shouldn't do it. She shouldn't drink Diet Coke. So yeah, I cringe when I hear about the diet sodas, but honestly, even the non-diet sodas, which I grew up on, I drank regular Coke and Pepsi on a regular basis, Hawaiian Punch. Yeah, it's a habit that in some cases it's hard to break. Now, thankfully, not that I recommend drinking these, but there are more natural sodas, or you could just drink some kombucha, which isn't soda, of course, but fermented beverage and has that similar, like my older daughter, she likes kombucha. And so I, of course, would rather her drink that than soda. And thankfully she enjoys it. My younger daughter, she doesn't like soda or kombucha. But anyway, so I think I'll end it here. Hope you found this conversation to be valuable. And of course, I look forward to catching you in the next episode. I want to let you know about a product called Hepatoimmune Supreme, which is a unique supplement that has a rare combination of N-acetylcysteine, also known as NAC, milk thistle, and schisandra to support the liver. And it also has a few mushrooms that can help support the immune system, including cordyceps, which has both immune modulating and adaptogenic properties and is great for those with Graves' disease and Hashimoto's. To learn more about Hepatoimmune Supreme, visit SaveMyThyroid.com/liver support.